Hello and welcome to another episode on Maritime Radar. Seaports play a crucial role in the global trade and transportation, serving as hubs for the import and export of goods via ships. Many seaports also handle passenger traffic, serving as embarkation and disembarkation points for cruise ships, ferries, and other passenger vessels. Seaports vary in size and capacity, ranging from small local harbors to major international shipping hubs. Large and strategically located ports can have a significant impact on regional and national economies by facilitating trade efficiency, boosting industrialization, and providing employment opportunities. Assessing government's intervention in the rehabilitation of Nigerian ports are some of the issues that will be on the front burner on today's show. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, the stories that put Africa first.
The administration and state of the Apapa and Tinkan ports and other 4 ports in the southeast have been of utmost concern to stakeholders in Nigeria, given how pivotal the business of the ports are to economic growth. Despite a series of interventions by the government to curb the underlying problems, bad road portions, obsolete infrastructure, delays in cargo clearance, lack of an automated cargo clearance system, perennial gridlock, the evident racketeering at this port have continued to trigger an increase in haulage costs and demurrage. Stakeholders say has led to the huge economic loss. Access to Lagos ports gridlock, defiling every known solution, developing other ports in the country for operational efficiency may be the way to go. Before we get further into today's lineup on the program, let's find out the latest in maritime news.
The Nigerian Shippers Council (NSC) has approved a 200% increment on haulage rate for transport owners and drivers operating under the Maritime Union of Nigeria. Importers, exporters, shippers and freight forwarders operating at the eastern ports of the country have unanimously rejected the increase, lamenting its impending inflationary effect should the hike stand. The bodies unanimously threatened operational shutdown as they declared a 7-day ultimatum during which the NSC is expected to return to status quo. Addressing journalists on behalf of the groups, Joshua Ahwama, Zonal Coordinator, Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents, noted that the meeting became necessary to enable the groups collectively reject the new rate as it contravened the provisions of the NSC Act, as stakeholders' consultation was an integral provision of the agency's Act. He took issue with the agency for not utilizing consultation, noting that several protest letters had been written to the Nigerian Shippers Council rejecting the hiked fare. The council has said that the newly approved rate took into consideration the cost, moderation, and other cargo transport issues. Nigeria's maritime industry is a prime economic driver, with 85% of the country's economic activities being delivered via ports worldwide. Mohammed Bello Koko, the managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, emphasized this point as he noted that maritime transport remains the gateway to the global marketplace, with ports as catalyst for economic development as they enable trade and support supply chains. During the NPA Day at the Enugu International Trade Fair, Bello Koko said he was on a mission to make Nigerian ports the leading ports in Africa. The International Maritime Bureau (IMB) says it is concerned about the increase in maritime piracy off the coast of Somalia in the first quarter of 2024. The IMB's report highlights a worrying trend of Somali pirate activity, with 2 reported hijackings and pirates demonstrating an increased ability to target vessels at greater distances from the Somali coast. The report noted the hijacking of dhows and fishing vessels, which pirates use as mother ships to launch attacks far from the Somali coastline. The first 3 months of this year saw a rise in incidents of piracy and armed robbery against ships globally, with 33 incidents recorded compared to 27 during the same period in 2023. Among the reported incidents, pirates boarded 24 vessels, attempted attacks on 6, hijacked 2, and fired upon 1. Violence towards crew members is also escalating, with 35 taken hostage, 9 kidnapped, and 1 threatened. Meanwhile, incidents in the Gulf of Guinea continue to reduce, with 6 reported in the first quarter of 2024 compared to 5 in the same period of 2023. Yemen's Houthi militant group said that it targeted 4 vessels, including a United States warship, with drones and naval missiles in the Gulf of Aden. In a televised speech, the military spokesman Yahya Saraya said that the Iran-aligned group attacked the ships MSC Darwin, MSC Jinnah, and MV Yorktown, along with the U.S. destroyer. There were no immediate reports that any of the ships had suffered damage. The U.S. military noted that it had destroyed an inbound anti-ship ballistic missile over the Gulf of Aden that was launched by Houthis and likely targeting the MV Yorktown. The U.S. Central Command added that there were no injuries or damage reported to U.S., coalition, or commercial ships in that incident. Months of Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, carried out in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, have disrupted global shipping, forcing firms to reroute to longer and more expensive journeys around southern Africa, and stoked fears that the Israel-Hamas war could spread to destabilize the wider Middle East. The United States and Britain have carried out strikes against Houthi targets in response to the attacks on shipping.
From the hills of the Southeast Africa, reporting coverage on the ground, exclusive reports, and the latest news, all right here. We speak to the people live, get their perspectives on the latest news, the happenings, and the trends. I am Bongani Siziba, live from Johannesburg, South Africa. This is News Central.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Maritime Radar. Nigerian ports have been described as the most expensive and inefficient in the West and Central African sub-region, which has made it unattractive to importers who prefer diverting cargoes meant for Nigerian ports to neighboring countries that have efficient port system. This report x-rays the 7 ports in Nigeria, its challenges, and the need for modernization to be able to compete with other ports in the continent. Take a listen.
Nigeria, with her 853-kilometer-long coastline facing the Atlantic Ocean, hosts 7 major seaports engaged in maritime trade. Lagos Port, also known as Apapa Quay, is the biggest port in Nigeria in terms of land area and volumes of cargo handled. The port spans more than 80 hectares and boasts of a 4-wheeled gate measuring 8 meters for receiving oversized cargo, giving it an edge over other Nigerian ports. The Tin Can Island port, situated west of Apapa near the Lagos Port Complex, is the second busiest port in Nigeria. Established in 1975 when economic activity, especially international trade, increased. The growing import and export trade led to congestion of the Lagos port, and the Tin Can Island had to be constructed for diverting excess cargo. Nigerian ports have been described as the most expensive and inefficient in the West and Central African sub-region. This made it unattractive to importers who prefer diverting cargoes meant for Nigerian ports to neighboring countries that have efficient port system. Near-collapsed infrastructure, long cargo dwell time, vessels turnaround time, 12-hour operation time, long clearing process, and port congestion are some of the factors that scare importers away from the ports.
What should happen first of all is, we need to carry out a total audit of our ports. First of all, we need to look at the best practices. What are the kind of ports, which ports in the world do we want to replicate? There are incredible ports in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, and other areas where they are running very port efficient systems. Now, what we need to do is to go there first of all and understand how they are running their port efficient system. Now, we don't necessarily have to copy everything that they're doing, but we need to see how can we take what they're doing in Guangzhou or in Shanghai or wherever the port efficiency is and come and introduce them in Nigeria. Most of the time, we need to tweak it because of the Nigerian way of doing things. But also, we can also develop technology. AI technology is in place and things like that, which can allow us to begin to learn and begin to create efficiencies. I also believe strongly that there has to be major investment as it relates to equipment that's needed to discharge cargoes at efficient rates and also make sure cargoes are loaded on board vessels very efficiently. Most importantly, our port needs to stop the operation of a 12-hour operation and begin to go into operation where we're doing 24-hour shift, which means we need to have our pilot boats working on time, our harbor tugs working 24/7, and also the port system is running 24/7, which means increased lighting and everything else. They don't necessarily have to clear the goods at the ports at that time, but just ensure that vessels can come in and have a fast turnaround, which would also assist in reducing the cost of freight of all these goods coming to Nigeria.
The recent announcement by the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Adegboyega Oyetola, that the $800 million funds needed for the rehabilitation of the ports reiterates the need to modernize the port for efficiency and to meet global standards.
Let me say that it is deliberate on the part of the President to have created this ministry. Blue economy has always been there before now, but it's not been so structured in a way to generate the kind of revenue given the potentials of Nigeria as a maritime nation. So part of what we're trying to do is to ensure that first, security. Secondly, we're going to be talking of rehabilitation of the ports to make it more efficient. Only 2 weeks ago, I received the report of the consultant on the port community system. Part of that is to ensure efficiency in the port. Again, we are modernizing the port, we are automating the port. We want to be able to compete with any port in the world. We want to ensure the vessel turnaround time is reduced to about 4 days, as opposed to about 6-10 days now. And I think deliberately we are doing a lot of that. We must commend the President for taking the initiative of creating the ministry and for supporting us all the way. I can tell you that the fund for rehabilitation of the port is almost ready. So we're going to commence rehabilitation anytime from now.
It takes 5 to 10 working days to clear a cargo in the port, be in a Apapa port or Tinkan port. It takes, and I said it depends on your documentation. If before the arrival of the vessel, if you perfect your documents very well, it takes you even last to 5 days to clear the goods from the port.
To clear your cargo at the seaport, it takes you about 3 to 4 days, all things being equal.
How do we address long days for clearing goods, the bureaucratic bottlenecks, and the multiplicity of functions by government agencies?
Having multiplicity of agencies within the ports, you have to go through almost about 12 to 15 tables of different government agencies. You look at NAVDA, Quarantine, SON, NDLA, Port Police, Port, so many agencies. And with almost about 7 departments of customs. Wow. Look at the bureaucratic process that must be collapsed. And after going through all these processes, even after exiting the port, once the shipment has been released, we are also going to face the Lagos state government on the road that will also collect their own taxes or their own duty on the road. you meet custom that will lay siege almost about 2 or 3 departments of custom on the road. One is Federal Task Force, one is a Federal Operation Unit, FOU. You meet them laying siege on the road. You see police on the road as well. Those are the bureaucratic process that we must collapse if we want to make the clearing process to be seamless and facilitate trade.
Most of this delay normally is from the documentation, maybe from clearing from the custom, from the terminal operator. Clearing of goods is not end in one bus stop. It's not with only custom. There is a long chain of movement of clearing. The importer is coming in, the importer that went to buy the goods. The agent is involved, custom is involved, bank is involved, other agencies that are involved. A lot of agencies are involved in the clearing of these goods.
Our efforts must be technology-backed. Let me just give you an example. There is a port in Kano. It's a dry port, Dala Inland Dry Port. Now, it has to be digital. It cannot be a manual port because the days of manual ports, manual infrastructure are actually gone. We have to operate digitally with technology. You know, technology will make huge difference. So if you're going to build a port or any transport infrastructure, for you to get licensed, you know, it must be a digital port, non-contact port. Okay, then smart port, you know, and then now when you go to our ports, you see multitude of people. People need not to go to the port. They sit down in their offices and transact business and move a lot of things.
It is sad that for you to facilitate your trade in the ports, you must be close to the hierarchy of custom or NDLA or NAFDAC. They must know you, you must know them. But if you want to cut down the corruption, like I used to say at different functions, if we can cut down corrupt practices within the port, we have succeeded in cutting down over 50% corruption in Nigeria.
The 4 seaports outside Lagos, starting with Calabar Port, became operational in 1979 and lies 45 nautical miles upstream from the Fairway buoy. A multi-purpose port, but requires regular dredging to maintain its 7.5-meter draft. The Warri Port was constructed in the late 1980s to serve the West Delta region and attract oil companies. It lies between Lagos and Onne Port. It enjoys an advantageous position and was declared a free trade zone in 2011. The most modern before the coming of Lekki Port in Lagos, Onne Port, lies on the River Bonny along the creek of Ogu. It was established as a free port zone to serve the oil and gas sector of West Africa. The refurbished port can accommodate the latest generation ocean-going vessels and consists of a Federal Ocean Terminal and the Federal Lighter Terminal. The Port Harcourt Port, located in the Gulf of Guinea in eastern Nigeria, requires regular dredging of its entrance for maintaining a constant water depth. It's an important transshipment hub for Niger and Chad, and also a railway terminus and a major Nigerian coal export harbor, handling 810,000 tons of cargo annually. Most of the ports require upgrade and modernization aside Onne and the Lekki ports. The worst hit is Port Harcourt and Tin Can ports, where there have been cases of failed quay walls and failed berths. The call by maritime stakeholders to declare a state of emergency on our decaying port infrastructure became apt.
There is correlation between infrastructure and development. If your infrastructure are outdated, they are not modern, it means transport cost will be astronomical. It means transaction costs will be astronomical. So the country is not in competition. Will not compete with others. But if you have modern infrastructure, then you could see immediate effect, on the economy. Our infrastructure are dilapidated, number one, and we have huge deficit in infrastructure. Unless we modernize our infrastructure, unless we create new infrastructure, then there would be a lot of problems. So the government should combine its deliberateness in providing modern infrastructure. And this infrastructure must be connected, integrated.
Vessels that we're going to use for the feeder system must be geared, which means they must be able to discharge by themselves in the first instance. And secondly, these same vessels must also have bow thrusters so that there's no need for us looking for harbor tugs to bring them alongside. So those kind of crossway, so that the vessel captain can come alongside, discharge without the need of any assistance, and the vessels can go.
With the over-dependence on Lagos ports and all the attendant issues of congestion and the gridlock, including heavy cost of delay in clearing cargo, experts recommend deliberate positioning of other ports in the country and enabling environment for them to function.
When the colonials were here, they had a policy. So they had critical ports. They had Lagos, they had Calabar, they had Cocoa, they had Port Harcourt, and they knew where to export and import. So they knew what port was best for what. Now there is no such thing. Apart from Roro, Tinkan, I don't know whether there's any special ports. So people just build ports politically and all that, and the federal government doesn't want to let go of Lagos or Port Harcourt. But that's not the correct answer. The correct answer would have been to say, what are the needs? Where are we seeing tonnage? If we have 1 million containers, where are they headed? Now, out of 1 million containers that come, 700,000 berthed in Lagos, only to go by road to the east. Because 7 out of 10 containers end up in Onitsha. Because that's where the market is. It's the largest market in Africa. So everybody from around Cameroon or Togo, I've been to the tile market in Ogidi. You should go there. It's a multi-billion naira tile market. The Chinese are running it. But there's no port. So it has to go all the way.
Other ports need to be developed, but definitely what needs to be done, we can also start small by creating a feeder system whereby in such areas where cargoes are discharged in Lagos, we can also begin to move cargoes to these other ports carrying 200, 300 TEUs as an instance, but as it begins to grow, we can bring in bigger vessels. But also one of the issues with port operations, quite simply, is the fact that you need tugboat.
The ease of doing business strategy of successive administrations in Nigeria hardly succeeded because of the lingering poor performance of ports in the country. The Minister of Marine and Blue Economy's announcement of government's readiness to address the underutilization of the other ports outside Lagos therefore came as a welcome development. Coming days will be significant in observing if the maritime industry will be repositioned and with it, efficient port system to take its pride of place in West Africa and the continent at large.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
And that's our show this week. I hope we've been able to take you through the journey of the 7 ports we have in Nigeria. Join us every week on Maritime Radar as we explore potentials that will ensure the development of the maritime sector in Africa. You can also expect the latest in global and local maritime news plus industry insights right here. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Many thanks for your time and see you again next week.